The city changed with the spring. Gray slush melted into bursts of color, cherry blossoms lining sidewalks, street vendors painting the air with roasted peanuts and pretzels. Open windows spilling music into crowded blocks. Daniel and I drifted through it like we owned it. Long walks through Central Park, lazy Sunday mornings tangled in sheets, dinners at tiny restaurants where the owners knew us by name. The city didn't feel hostile anymore, it felt like ours. But even in sunlight, shadows lingered. It began with little things. Missed calls. Unanswered texts. Times when he promised he'd be there, and I waited in a CAF or at the station, only to get a last-minute message. Sorry. Work. One evening, after the third cancelled dinner in 2 weeks, I stormed into his studio. He was bent over a model, eyes hollow from exhaustion, hands trembling slightly as he adjusted a tiny piece of glass. Daniel, I snapped, dropping the bag of takeout onto his desk. Do you even remember what today is? He blinked, confused. Tuesday? 6 months since that night in the CAF. My voice cracked on the words. 6 months since us. And you forgot. Guilt flickered across his face, but then he masked it with irritation. I didn't forget. There's a deadline. I can't afford to. Can't afford to what? Spend one evening with me? You're always here, drowning in this place, and I broke off, fighting the ache in my throat. I am starting to feel like I am just another project you'll abandon halfway. He dropped the model piece with a clatter, running both hands through his hair. God, don't say that. Then give me a reason not to. Silence stretched between us, heavy and raw. Finally, he crossed the room and took my face in his hands. You're the only thing I haven't given up on, he whispered. And though I let him kiss me, though I clung to him like he was the only solid thing in the world, a part of me still wondered if love was enough to hold us together. Weeks later, we attended a gallery opening downtown. One of Daniel's old friends, a sculptor named Marianne, was showing her work. She was beautiful in that effortless, magnetic way, with wild curls and laughter that drew people like moths to flame. I watched the two of them from across the room. The way she leaned into him, the way his smile softened when he spoke to her. Something ugly curled in my chest. When he finally returned to me, I forced a smile. You didn't tell me she was gorgeous. He laughed, oblivious. She's Marianne. We've known each other forever. Seems like more than that. His brow furrowed. Are you jealous? I hated the way my cheeks burned. Should I be? He sighed, squeezing my hand. You're the one I come home to. Doesn't that answer your question? But that night, as I lay awake beside him, I couldn't shake the image of Mariana's hand brushing his arm, the ease in their laughter. Doubt gnawed at me, sharp and merciless. The arguments became more frequent. Always about small things at first, forgotten dates, unanswered messages, the way he sometimes vanished into silence. But beneath those words was the real fear neither of us dared to name. That the city, with its relentless hunger, was tearing us apart. One night, after a particularly brutal fight, I left his apartment and wandered the streets until dawn. The city felt colder then, every shadow stretching longer, every corner whispering of loss. I ended up back at the CAF, the one where it had all begun. It was closed, of course. But I pressed my hand against the window, staring at the empty tables inside, and whispered, "Don't let this slip away." I didn't know who I was pleading with, Daniel, fate, or myself. Despite the cracks, there were still moments of beauty. Days when he'd surprise me with flowers, or when we'd escape the city entirely, taking the train to the coast, walking barefoot on cold sand, watching gulls cut through the gray sky. On one of those trips, as the tide lapped at our ankles, Daniel said quietly, "Sometimes I think about quitting. Leaving the firm, the city, all of it." I turned to him, startled. "And then what?" He shrugged. Start over somewhere else. Build something of my own. Something that matters. Would I be part of that? I asked. He looked at me then, with such fierce tenderness it almost broke me. You're already part of everything. For a while, I believed him. But the city doesn't let go easily. His deadlines grew harsher, his nights longer. He came home smelling of whiskey and fatigue, eyes bloodshot, voice frayed. I tried to hold him together, but some nights he slipped through my fingers like water. One evening, I found him asleep at his desk, head resting on scattered sketches. His phone buzzed beside him, a message lighting up the screen. A name I recognized, Mary Ann. I didn't open it. I couldn't. But the sight of it carved a hollow in my chest that nothing could fill. The last time we were truly happy was on a rooftop in Queens. The city sprawled beneath us, glittering and endless, the skyline sharp against the darkening sky. I love you, I told him, my voice breaking because it felt both like a truth and a goodbye. He pulled me close, his lips brushing my hair. I love you too. More than this city, more than anything. And for a moment, I believed we could still survive the cracks, that love might be strong enough to hold the glass together. But glass, once fractured, has a way of shattering. I still remember the night everything changed. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it was so painfully ordinary. The city was restless, as always, horns blaring, neon signs humming, the pulse of footsteps beating through the streets. I had gone to his apartment after work, balancing 2 bags of takeout, rehearsing in my mind how I'd tell him I was tired of competing with his deadlines. Tired of feeling like a shadow in his life. But when I opened the door, the sight stopped me cold. He wasn't alone. Mary Ann sat at the edge of his desk, laughing at something he had said. Their heads bent close, too close. A glass of wine in her hand, his jacket draped over the chair beside her. It wasn't incriminating, not yet, but it was enough to twist something inside me. Am I interrupting? My voice came out sharper than I intended. They both turned, surprise flashing across their faces. Daniel stood quickly, his expression unreadable. You're early. I set the bags down harder than necessary. Should I have texted first? Made an appointment? Don't do this, he said softly, but his tone only fueled the fire. Mary Ann, sensing the storm, excused herself with a quick smile and a murmured goodbye. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving silence in her wake. I folded my arms. So, this is why you've been so busy? His eyes flashed. Don't twist this. She came by to drop off some materials. That's all. Funny, I said bitterly, I don't remember wine being a building material. He exhaled, frustrated, running a hand through his hair. Why are you doing this? Why don't you trust me? Because you keep giving me reasons not to. My voice cracked. You disappear for days, you drown yourself in work, and when I finally see you, you're here with her. Nothing happened, he said firmly, his voice low but steady. I love you. Isn't that enough? The words hung in the air, but they didn't comfort me. They terrified me. Because for the first time, I realized love might not be enough to hold us together. The fight didn't end that night. It bled into days, into weeks. Every conversation felt like walking on broken glass. We'd try to fix things, only to reopen the wounds. One evening, standing in Washington Square Park, rain slicking the pavement, I broke down. I can't keep doing this, I whispered, tears mixing with the drizzle. I can't keep waiting for you to choose me over the city, over your work, over her. He looked at me, rain dripping from his lashes, his face pale and stricken. I am choosing you. Every day. Then why does it feel like I am always losing? For a moment, I thought he might argue, might plead. But instead, he looked away, and in that silence, I knew we were both afraid of the same thing. that no matter how much we loved each other, the city, and our own flaws, were stronger. The last time I saw him was by accident. Weeks later, on a crowded street, I spotted him from across the avenue. He looked thinner, exhausted, carrying rolled-up plans under his arm. Our eyes met for just a heartbeat before the tide of pedestrians swallowed him whole. I wanted to run to him, to scream his name, to bridge the gulf that had opened between us. But my legs wouldn't move. And just like that, he was gone. News travels fast in New York, though never gently. A phone call. A voice too calm, too measured. There had been an accident. A construction site collapse. Daniel was gone. The days after blurred into something unreal. The city moved on, relentless and indifferent, while I drifted through it like a ghost. His apartment was emptied, his studio dismantled. Models and sketches boxed away, his handwriting on scraps of paper the only proof that he had ever existed. At night, I lay awake replaying everything. Our first meeting in the CAF, the rain on the windows, the ink smudging on my hand when he wrote his number. His laugh, his anger, the way he kissed me like he was both saving and surrendering. And the words that haunted me most, "You're the only thing I haven't given up on." Weeks later, I returned to the CAF. It hadn't changed, still the same scratched tables, the same hum of coffee machines. I sat at our old spot, ordered a cup I barely touched, and stared out at the rain-streaked street. For the first time, the city felt quiet. Not forgiving, not cruel, just quiet. I pulled a notebook from my bag and began to write. About him. About us. About the way love can bloom in the most unexpected places, and the way loss carves its own kind of permanence. Because maybe, just maybe, telling our story was the only way to keep him alive. And even now, when I walk these streets, I sometimes imagine I'll see him again. Sitting in a corner CAF, looking out at the rain, waiting for me to sit down. I know it's impossible. But hope, like love, doesn't always listen to reason. If only I had known how it would all end. I used to think those words meant regret. Now I am not so sure. Months passed. The city shifted again. Summer heat rising from the pavement, the smell of food carts, the laughter of children chasing pigeons in the parks. New York continued its endless dance, but I moved through it slower, as if my body had learned the weight of absence and couldn't quite forget it. People told me time would heal. That grief fades. But grief doesn't fade, it changes shape. Some days it's a knife, sharp and merciless. Other days it's a shadow, soft but always present. And sometimes it's a quiet companion, reminding you that love once lived here. I still found myself drifting to places where he and I had been. The bookstore tucked between two towers, where he once pretended to get lost just so I'd keep walking the aisles with him. The Brooklyn Bridge, where the wind carried his laughter into the night. The studio window where the Empire State Building gleamed, red and green on Christmas Eve. And always the CAF. One evening, when the first autumn chill returned, I slipped inside once more. It was nearly empty, just a handful of strangers murmuring over their drinks. I took our usual table by the window, the rain streaking down the glass exactly as it had the night we met. I ordered coffee, black. He used to tease me for it, insisting I should at least add sugar. "Life's bitter enough," he'd say with that half smile. As I sat there, I pulled out my notebook. It was filled now, pages upon pages of us. Not perfect, not polished, but alive with memory. Our story, captured in ink before the city could swallow it whole. A young couple entered the CAF, shaking rain from their coats. They looked about our age when we first met. The woman glanced around, uncertain, then asked a man sitting alone if the seat beside him was taken. For a moment, my breath caught. It was as if I was watching a reflection of myself, of us. A story beginning in the same rain-soaked hum. And in that instant, I understood, the city never stops weaving its tales. Love doesn't die, it simply shifts, carried forward by others who will also laugh, fight, break, and maybe, if they're lucky, endure. I left the CAF that night lighter than I had been in months. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle, the streets glowing with fractured reflections of traffic lights. I tilted my face upward, letting the drops kiss my skin, and for the first time since losing him, I smiled. Because maybe love isn't about forever. Maybe it's about the way it changes you, the way it lingers in your breath and bones, the way it teaches you to see the city not as chaos but as possibility. Daniel had loved me in that way, enough to change me, enough to stay in the rain and in the quiet spaces of my heart. Now, when I walk through New York, I no longer feel swallowed by its enormity. I feel connected. To him. To us. To the millions of stories unfolding around me. And sometimes, when the night is heavy and the streets shine wet with rain, I catch myself glancing into a CAF window, half expecting to see him there. Waiting. Smiling that half smile. As if nothing had ended at all. If only I had known how it would all end, I would still have walked into that CAF. I would still have sat beside him. I would still have chosen love, even if it meant choosing loss. Because some stories are worth living, even if they don't last forever.